When players in your campaign go into a new village, run into them on the road, or meet them during a quest, is it more likely that they'll walk away feeling like they just talked to a cardboard cutout, or an NPC that has a story that can roll with the punches that you throw? What makes an NPC lifelike, and do they always have to be? That's what we're going to be talking about today. This is the How to Be a Better DM podcast. My name is Tanner Wayland, and today we're going to be talking about how to be the best DMs we can be without breaking your wallet, your relationships, or your will to DM. And today we're actually joined by some amazing guests. We are joined by DMs Shea and Kyle from the Dungeon Master Talk podcast. Say hi, guys.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having us.
Always love having another fellow DM. So with that in mind, you guys, how long have you guys been obsessed with being DMs?
Oh, take that away, Shay. That's like your favorite question of all time.
Well, let's see. I started DMing kind of full time, I guess, when my current group got together in 2021. That would have been April of 21. But up until then, I've done like one shots, a couple 3 sessions worth kind of campaigns. But I've always wanted to actually do a campaign that actually had an ending. Because like a lot of groups, unfortunately, like they fizzle out due to schedules or whatever. And this group here, they've actually kept me on my toes for the last coming up on 4 years next week. We're going on our 35th session coming up in April. And we had a stretch there where I think we had like 25 months straight. So I'm super thankful for them. But that said, like I've enjoyed growing as a DM and being the DM for these guys because like I get to not only just use our imaginations together, but we get to create this story together. And even though we're the only ones that get to hear it, we're the ones that get to remember it in the same way that we got to hear it. So I guess to answer your question, like I've just really enjoyed the story creating aspect and just like, ooh, I wonder where that tangent can take me. I wonder where that tangent can take me. So and just kind of running with it and seeing what my players take and make, take that idea and make it even better than it was when I had it in my head. So,
yeah.
And for me, I started obsessing about it when I first met Shay. Our wives met each other first and said, "Hey, you two are both nerds. You'd get along really well."
Classic.
And
this is accurate. We bonded over tacos and actually burritos and D&D is actually what
burritos.
Oh,
yep. And Shay started just showing me all these different characters that he had made. Because Shay can spin out a new character like it's going out of style. He has a million ideas, it seems like. And he was telling me of all these characters, and I was like, we need to play. I don't have a single character idea. But then I started thinking, like, what world would we play in? Like, what world would those characters work together in? And pretty quickly, I was like, I'm terrified to do this, but I want to DM. And like 2 years later, I approached Shay, and I was like, hey, I want to DM. I've never really done this other than a one-shot. Like, would you be in my group and tell me if I'm an idiot? And otherwise, let me just be an idiot and DM this. And he was like, well, you're not an idiot. You can have a ton of fun and we'll have a blast together. It's us. It can't go wrong. And that was really the confidence I needed to launch off.
I think it was really like, what's the worst that could happen? I think is really what was said. And, everything spiraled up from that. So.
Exactly.
I love that. And it's so true. For all you DMs out there, remember, if you're with friends, being stupid is a benefit. It's really like, it only helps you have a great time. And especially that's true with D&D. If you're a first time DM, just find friends and be like, hey, I'll probably make some mistakes. Is that cool? And they'll be like, oh, more than cool. We expect that. And that's awesome.
One of the moments in my campaign that we talk about the most, I described that there was a calf, like a baby cow. Yeah. And I was like, and it's mooing, and I didn't move. I made it like, because I grew up in central Nebraska. I'm very familiar with what cows sound like. So I was like, it sounds like, I was like, wait, that's an adult cow. That's not what it sounds like. It'd be more like, and Then they're like, wait, it mooed twice. We don't think it's real. And I was like, no. I was playing around with the noise. And they're like, no, that's a mimic. It mooed twice, 2 different moves. It can't be a real cow. The obsession around it, and I was literally just trying to like add a little bit to my scenery because I was like, I'm not good at literally going into that session. I was like, I'm going to work on how I build up scenery. I'm going to add more realism into the scenery. And then I mooed for this cow and it derailed that session in probably the first half of the session after because they were like, this cow means something. He wouldn't have done that if it didn't mean something.
There's no way he would have done that on accident.
It was clearly like, I just want the world to have more in it.
We can neither confirm or deny how long we actually chased the sound of that cow.
It was a long time, and it still gets brought up.
That is so good, and I love it. But it's a great launching off point. Talking about realism or lack thereof, let's talk about the topic of our podcast, how to make lifelike NPCs, and why you would want to do that. But as a teaser, for any of our Patreon-only members, or those who would like to join, at the end of this episode, for our Patreon members, we're going to be also discussing kind of a tangential little mini topic of should you pay off every NPC plot thread? And how can you do it without shoehorning it in? But before we get to the main topic, we actually have one little sponsored game here. So our sponsor, worldsmith.io, they're a generation platform where you can like generate monster ideas or NPCs or anything like that. And I thought it would be a fun idea to just get some, just some general ideas from you guys about how to turn our grandparents into a monster that you could actually fight in combat. I thought it would be fun. Okay, Ooh. First off, are you guys close with your grandparents?
I was,
yes.
Yeah. Classic. With that being said, would you call them a strong person, either character-wise or otherwise?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Like, on a scale of 1 to 20, challenge rating-wise, like how strong?
23.
Oh yeah,
it goes up.
My grandma's death, my grandma's death glare scared non-family members. She's a 20.
20.
Oh,
Deal. Yeah. Okay. And I'm assuming you thought of them as angels, so probably celestial.
Oh yeah.
In origin. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Deal. Were your let's go with grandmas specifically. Were they tall? Were they short?
Short.
Okay.
Tall.
Yours was yeah, because you're like 6'6" and call yourself short.
We'll do medium then. Okay. Obviously good, but were they more lawful or chaotic?
Lawful.
Mine was definitely lawful.
Lawful good. Perfect. Okay. You know what? We're gonna say supernatural in origin because they're grandparents. They're awesome. Legendary actions. Let's go with a nice 3. Okay.
Sounds solid.
So when you think of your grandma, each of you come up with 2 different nouns that you feel like describe them.
Nouns.
Let's see. Well, the grandma I have in mind, she was a substitute English teacher back in the day. So I would say that she had a +5 to perception, especially to literacy checks.
Okay.
I was just thinking like nouns like, all right, my grandma was a boss.
Like a boss.
Rights.
I definitely wasn't thinking through my stats.
Okay, boss.
Let's see.
Did she have
charisma?
Charismatic?
Mm-hmm. Yep. She was a piano teacher, so high intelligence and good dexterity.
Definitely good dexterity. Yep.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Okay. And she was stubborn, so that Constitution score is good.
Constitution score. Okay, guys. no promises here, because I wrote +5 to perception, writes well,
Yes.
charismatic, high intelligence and dexterity, high constitution score.
This is like a
That's
broken
most
thing.
of them.
Yep. We're not gonna say bad things about our grandmas.
Nope. I'm pretty sure we're just describing a solar deva at this point. So it's the
Yep.
same thing.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. It's generating. Yeah, for me, my grandma was short. She cooked very well. She
Oh
was.
yeah.
I mean, yeah. She actually ran a candy business, like a confection
Oh,
candy
wow.
business for years. And there's a great story of me going with my grandpa to like one of the candy shows where there was just like a bunch of like homemade stuff, and getting super sick and just throwing up all over the stalls. Great story. I'll have to tell you that someday. Okay, so we have Celestial Matron Arclore, medium celestial,
Ooh.
lawful good. The air tingles with a serene energy as the celestial matron Arclore manifests before you. Her presence is the embodiment of wisdom and nurturing power, her gentle demeanor veiling an unfathomable strength. Though her form is humanoid, it radiates an ethereal glow that bathes the surroundings in a soothing luminescence. Her eyes, pools of star-like galaxies, speak of infinite ages and kindness. Her hands, deft and skilled, there it is, weave complex symbols that shimmer into existence around her. She stands as guardian and guide, her aura as a beacon of hope and justice in the bleakest of times. Lore. Arclore is whispered among sages to be the progenitor of celestial wisdom, a timeless entity from beyond mere mortal understanding. Her guidance is sought throughout the realms, known as the voice that echoes purpose and direction, yet immutable in her cosmic path. Armor class 24. Hit points 400. Walk
Accurate.
speed 40 feet, fly speed 60. So yeah, she's got her lowest modifier is +2 strength. Everything else is like 6,
Dang.
7, 6. Wisdom is 9. Charisma 8. Woof.
Yep.
Yep.
That'll do it. That'll do it.
Dang.
Yeah, you talk your way around this one.
Yeah. Seriously.
Even then, may the odds be in your favor.
Yes.
Yep.
She has a celestial radiance. The matron emits a radiant aura within 20 feet. At the start of her turn, she bathes allies in healing rays, restoring 20 hit points to each. Arcane Scribe. She can
Ooh.
transcribe any magical text as a bonus action with deft precision, instantly understanding and replicating its effects. Also, she has
Nice.
multi-attack. 3 attacks with her radiant staff.
Is one of those a frying pan? Like what's the weapon of choice?
You know, the great thing about Worldsmith is I can change the radiant staff to radiant frying pan. There it is.
Gore.
Frying pan. Crush.
The ultimate weapon.
Yep.
Yes.
And then has Starverse Slash, which is a +14 to hit. Classic. Target is engulfed in celestial fire, taking 18 radiant damage at the start of each of its turns for 1 minute. It's 4d8
That's a lot of cover.
for a whole minute. A successful
Ooh,
DC 22 Wisdom saving throw ends the effect.
No biggie, just 22.
Yeah,
you got this.
Easy. And so
It's fine.
just so much going on there. And I think there's a lot to read about this celestial matron Arclore. But thank you for going along with me down that little
For
sponsored
sure, that's fun.
monster generation. But they're not a monster. They're your grandma. Okay, let's get into the actual topic now. Lifelike NPCs. Here's a question for you guys. Do you feel like you're particularly good at making your NPCs feel lifelike?
So, lifelike in D&D versus lifelike, it really does, I think, depend on what you're going for in your campaign.
Yeah.
I have my characters that they have the rich background that my player group like they're enamored with, but I wouldn't say that they're lifelike in them into this world and it works, but they're lifelike in that they feel like they belong in the world and they feel like they're shaped by the world. Okay. And then I definitely have my most common NPC though doesn't feel quite that way. They feel like they belong in that instance, but not like, oh, you could meet them out on the street and it'd make as much sense. Typically because if they're on a run-of-the-mill play session, it's not that this NPC isn't important. It's that they're not necessarily the plot thread. So if they're just looking for a shop because they wandered into a town, unless, like I said, it's the city I built where I've literally spent the last 6 years working on everybody that's in the city. But pretty much every other one, the shopkeep, it was this, okay, what are my standard motivations for this town? I roll my dice to determine if the shopkeep is in line with those or opposite, and then kind of go accordingly from there.
I love that.
That's good. I think I told you this in the email. I've been kind of stewing on this one for the last week or so, and it was really ever since our last play session. To make a long story short, they just got done with another boss battle, and the reason they knew about this boss in particular was because one of the players had been having like a kind of a like prophetic dream about having this person like seeing them in their dreams, and like kind of there's a little bit of like a telekinetic connection between the two of them. But when they first met the guy, the bad guy essentially was sitting at the front of this altar, and this particular player walks in, and they start talking, and he basically goes, "Well, who are you?" And the bad guy looks at him and was like, "You don't know who I am." And to me, it was like, okay, I got introspective for a second, because did I make this NPC rememberable enough in his dreams that it was like a simple, like 3-word description? They'd be like, I know exactly who this person is. But I think to your point, Kyle, it's like, if I'm going to make them, like in this case, kind of the ultimate person, I kind of want to make them more distinguishable than maybe just like the standard shopkeep that they may meet like once or twice. But I think the way that we describe them, and we don't necessarily have to do like an 8-page backstory on them, but we can at least get them to the point of like realizing, okay, this is somebody that is going to be important to you going forward, versus this guy that you walk into a shop, buy something from him, and walk away. So I guess to answer your question, I think it just really depends on the amount that you're wanting to put into this character, this NPC, versus just having one on file for, I need a random shopkeep for XYZ.
Yeah.
So, and with my group, I've learned, and I did this to myself, my group had a really, I'm not going to say bad habit, but they had a habit for a long time of never seeking to know the name of somebody who they interacted with, never really trying to dive into it more than what's the thing I'm supposed to get from you. And so I started making it a lot harder for them to get that thing from the NPC. And when they were finally like, hey, you've said we're taking too long in these places, but you're making it really hard for us to get this info. So I was like, yeah, I want us to progress, but I want you to interact with my world. You don't even know their name. And now they'll be like, who's out on the street? And I'll be like, there's 5 people out walking. They'll go up to all 5 and ask them their names now. And it's to troll me. And that's what I love about my group. But now if I have a standard shopkeep, I can tell that they're trying to tease out of me, like, do you have anything for this guy? Or is this shallow? And then if it's somebody that they kind of deduce that I don't have much for, they're going to make me come up with it in the moment. They're going to suddenly try to get really deep with this character unless I have a hook for them not to. But that's something my play group has started, and that comes, like, we've been playing together for years now, so sometimes they're just in the mood to, like, it's time to kind of rib the DM. Is he on his game today? Or sometimes they're like, okay, we're here to progress plot, we want to play. But
Yeah.
my group is very role play focused, so they love to catch me in those moments and I have a couple players, my wizard, my warrior, and my rogue, that their eyes kind of light up when they realize like, oh, you didn't plan for me to be here. Now I'm gonna stay here.
Yep. It's just a classic player thing to do. And honestly,
Hmm.
it makes sense in some ways because, a lot of players have been conditioned to be like, oh, most of these NPCs are just, they're there for one purpose and one purpose only. Let's
Yep.
just get to that purpose quicker, right? I want to move on to something more substantial. And maybe that's a fault, for us DMs to realize like, oh, maybe I do that too often. Or maybe like when I do have an NPC who isn't particularly useful, maybe I don't telegraph how they could be useful and just move the story along. But
Hmm.
you also spoke to the fact that like a lifelike NPC isn't like Kyle. You said this, and I thought it was really insightful. It's not lifelike in the way that you go out on the street, you talk to somebody, right? It's lifelike in the
Right.
way that you know that they have a deeper connection to the world.
Yeah.
You know that they probably have their own development, their own goals, their own dreams, right? Um, but at the same time, you have to make it so that it also coincides with what the players are doing, so that they actually have a reason to talk to that NPC. And
Exactly.
I guess in my like, it kind of brings up the question in my head, uh, like, can you make it too lifelike? Can you put in like, where's the point where you've put in more effort than it's going to return to the campaign, right?
I think I learned the answer to this one very much the hard way. I had a character that I wanted to introduce while we were still going through the one shot, not the, sorry, the pre-built Lost Mind of Fandelver.
Yeah.
But I wanted to introduce this character that wasn't from the book, but I wanted him to have a very organic introduction. So the Red Brands are common enemy in that campaign. Not going to go into spoilers in it. If anybody wants to play it, go through it later. But the Red Brands are essentially your run-of-the-mill bad guy, and they're a nuisance throughout most of it. I wanted to have one of them that, because my party had a tendency to finish off everyone that they came up to, so I wanted this to be one that got away. And I wrote for him, and I wrote for him. Like I had probably 3 to 5 pages worth of notes just around this one NPC, and the group hunted him mercilessly. I could there like my plan was I'm just gonna kind of, this is gonna be something that I truly do railroad. He is getting away, and I
Yeah.
normally don't believe in railroading, but then my group had not one, not two, not three, but 4 natty 20s that night. So the dice said no, this guy does not get away, and you can't. There's a certain point as a DM where you just got to kind of accept that, like, well, I'm got here, and they finished him off, and I was like, that's like, I've worked on this guy. I had so many plans. I was like, I'm throwing out like, and you never really throw out as a DM. You put away all these plans, and I was like, I have no idea how I'm going to reintroduce this in this campaign. I was so bummed. And that's really, I think, the answer is if this plot thread isn't explored, or they jump it, or they avoid it, or they go the opposite way on it, does it give you that like, I wasted so much time feel? Then you went too far. But if it's, you know what, that didn't go the way I thought it would. It honestly went better. The way they played it fits so much better for their characters. They understand them better than I do. I'm so happy. Then that's the right amount. And that really is, I know that's not a time listener so much of the time, like, oh, you didn't give me, like, I should spend an hour on this. It depends on you as a DM and your kind of prep style. I love building the world much more than I love building the people in the world. And I had to learn to love to build the people in the world. And so for me, spending more than an hour on a single person in the world, that's not who I am. And if I'm doing that, it's a very important character. And so it's someone that I am intentionally fleshing out, because even one interaction with this character has to matter for the players. but everybody else, like 10 minutes is probably the most I'm going to spend on them, even if I'm going to make sure that they're fairly well rounded for an NPC. But that's because I've kind of got it down to I hit what's their motivation based on the area, um, what's their kind of one unique thing, and then throw in the kind of rest into like I get a random name generator name going, and then I have like a table that is what are the odds of what kind of races within D&D is it, like what's the odds that this is an elf, what's the odds that this is a human, what's the odds that this is a dwarf, and I roll my dice, and then that shapes out a little bit more, because if they're like a rarity, then that area I want to make sure that then they're not just like a side character. I want to make sure, because I know my playgroup's going to be like, oh hey, look, an elf here that we don't see a lot of elves in this area. They're going to interact, so I make sure I have a little bit more. But if it lands on human, and humans are the most common in that area, I'm like, okay, this is enough. I can move on to the next one.
Yeah. Shay, what about you?
Yeah, I think like Kyle kind of hit on it too, is like kind of finding that fine balance of making sure that the character that you're making is utility enough for what you need them to be. I think that's really what it comes down to, is like, okay, if, for example, your crew is in a town and they frequent the same bar a lot, you might start putting more and more like stock into the bartender, because that's going to be your point of contact. Like, they're going to give you the jobs, they're going to serve you your drinks and your lodging and whatever. Whereas like if you are very nomadic, you may have kind of like a trick or two up your sleeve, just in case they do ask the random, like, what do you want to do with your life? Question that, it may or may not happen. But I think your party will help tell you which people you need to focus on. I think it's good to have just kind of a blank slate. But at the same time, your players will tell you which characters you need to fill out the backdrop for. Instead of having to worry about everything all at one time, your players will kind of help you focus in on the ones that they think that are the ones that need to be focused on, except, with the obviously exception of the big bad guy. And that will kind of color into that too. But yeah, to basically quit circling the idea, let your players kind of lead the detail of what they want, and then fill in the gaps at that point.
I really like that, especially because it is, work smarter, not harder as a DM.
Exactly.
I think that's the key to being a DM, is like, hey,
100%.
let's actually put less work into the stuff that doesn't end up showing up on the screen, so to speak. And instead put more work into the things that the players themselves are showing, like, hey, I'm interested in this, right?
Yeah.
Like, if they randomly take interest in the random straight urchin on the street, maybe that's the cue to be like, oh, maybe they could have a backstory that I wasn't thinking too hard about before this, but I can actually flesh it out. And further, I think that if you're planning on having an NPC present quests, maybe you don't put a quest giver there, right? Maybe you're like, oh, let's just populate a village. Let's populate a little tavern and see who they interact with. Yeah, you've got to get good at making descriptions of NPCs, make them look interesting. Also, like, oh, roll a perception check. And like the little tidbits of conversation you drop, you want to kind of give breadcrumbs, but don't worry about making the whole piece of bread that breadcrumb leads to, until the players are like, oh, I actually want this one, Yeah.
Well, and to kind of give a real example, like our party, they we're doing the pre-gen of the Princess of the Apocalypse.
Yeah.
And there was a deep gnome that was a prisoner in the dungeon, the part of the dungeon that they were in. Well, the quote unquote newest guy of the party basically roped this hostage into their group, so that way he wasn't the new guy anymore. So he was kind of moving up the MLM of their own group that wasn't actually. But anyway,
yes, love it.
But they basically had him kind of tag along, even though like they've paid him a little bit of mind, but not really. He's just kind of been drug along with the story. But it's honestly, to your point, I think it's one of the things. I think they will sometimes keep people around just to kind of have in their back pocket, but maybe not necessarily, use as part of the quest. Essentially, they'll just kind of take them for granted and kind of keep them with them without actually using them. So,
my favorite NPC of all time in my campaign was one that I had actually forgotten about entirely. I made him up in the spur of the moment to just had a character. He didn't even make it into my notes because I didn't think he was going to matter. I had to go back. I record my sessions. When one of the players brought him back up, I had to go back and listen to it. I had to ask him, like, about when did I introduce this guy? And he remembered him and had detailed notes about it, and it was because he wanted to hire him. And he went back and he hired him. He told him to change his appearance. His exact wording was change your face because he didn't want him to be recognizable.
Yes.
And this NPC ended up being an extra party member for a really long time until very recently when unfortunately he met his end. But that NPC, he ended up having like air quotes won D&D. He had gotten a family, and then my party caused a world soft reset. That's what can happen when you work with God. So he lost that all. And then he was he went from being a fearful NPC that took the backseat in combat to he didn't care for himself anymore, which ultimately led to his demise. And it was a very heartbreaking tale. I was running that combat and was like, kept every turn was just like, and remember he's down. And remember he's down. I was like, please don't make me do this. I was like, remember he's down. And that's how much I was caring about. And they played their characters right, and what happened. But like I was like, please, this is my favorite NPC now. I don't want him to go.
Oh man, yeah, and that's. I mean, it makes me think about the purpose of having deeper NPCs, right? Because it would be so easy to just fill your campaign with basically like info booth NPCs, where it's like, yeah, you can just get some info, but they don't actually interact. They don't have like essentially character development based on what the players do, right? Because I love that, you mentioned, there was a soft reset because of what the players did. He lost all that, which I think is a key part of having a lifelike NPC is like, their lives are affected by what the players do. And not just like, they died, but like in a way that like normal lives are affected. They lose a job.
Yeah.
They meet someone. They suddenly lose a limb and they have to walk around like as a peg leg, whatever it is, right? Their life is majorly affected, and maybe even their outlook on the world. But then the question is like, okay, it can be fun for us as DMs. What do you think it does for players when you have more of these immersive NPCs in the world?
You start to, big thing I notice of kind of what, it'd be amazing. I wish I went into psychology at all, just because I think I'd understand my party better, or maybe it'd concern me more. But what I've noticed is the level of engagement in roleplay and how well they pay attention to even when it's not their moment is drastically increased now. Back when, the Precon did a good job of trying to give me enough to go off of each character, but I wasn't as experienced as a DM yet. I did so much less with so much more back then, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But like now, because you don't have to have a character that has this deep, rich backstory to make them feel alive in the moment. Just give them emotion in the moment. Let them, if a player is rude to them, let them get a little short. They don't have to get like rageful, because that'd be an extreme reaction. But I think we've all been in a store where you can tell that the cashier's had it for the day, or that waitress is doing her best to still smile. So like try to put that a little bit into your character in the moment. Sometimes what I like to do is kind of the trope of like, the shopkeep's always so happy. I've tried to stop that. So my shopkeep's not always like, oh, welcome in. Sometimes my shopkeeps are like, it's almost closing time. And so just trying to do little things like that change up your world. And then when you have those deep, rich NPCs having their kind of like what you were alluding to, let there be consequences. D&D, it's so easy to just have it be like, oh, you know, you just went on to the next town. There's no consequence. I keep a impact, essentially, not really clock, but you can kind of think of it as that, I suppose. But it's when the big bad evil guy isn't on screen, what they're, and I have more than one, but what they are doing in the world while the players are active, and then I have an impact. So whatever choices my players do, I normally introduce forks in the road to them in terms of story. So if they didn't go down one path, what's the impact off that? And I'm constantly progressing it, which I think makes the world itself feel more alive, which then kind of innately makes your NPCs feel a little bit better.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I can't remember game specific, so forgive me for if I screw this, but
No, you could.
my roommates before I got married, they I think it was Wolves Among Us, maybe. Trying to think of the video game it was called, but it was an interactive story game where you would see in the side corner where like this person will remember this.
Yes, that was,
you know,
Wolves
like you would see the.
Yep.
Is it Wolves Among Us? Okay, so like
that's such a good game.
You'll see like, you know, the rabbit will remember this, or, you know, whoever will remember that you did or did not help them. And so like making an NPC more of a real life character, like going back to your tavern guy, right? Like if you frequent the same tavern a lot, and if you have a lackluster relationship with the barkeep, you know, he might spit in your drink before he gives it to you. Like he'll still serve you because you're a patron of his bar, but he'll, you know, he may, you know, spit in your drink or whatever. Or
charge
vice
you
versa.
a bit more.
Yeah, or you know, charge you double, or, you know, not let you stay at his inn because, you know, you didn't take care of the facilities, whatever, when you were there last. Or vice versa. Like if you're really like attentive to like how the barkeep's feeling, like if you try to help him out every so often, maybe he's like, hey, I'll cut you a deal, you know, you can stay for cheaper, for free, or, you know, whatever, I'll help you get more jobs. But, you know, so like you said, because the way we treat people in real life, I mean, that affects what we do later on if we have to interact with them again. So like, why should an interactive TTRPG be any different than kind of that same interaction in real life?
Yeah.
So
And I even think that sometimes players don't get the consequences for their actions in the way that would actually be most helpful. Because it's like sometimes we treat it like black and white, where it's like, oh, because you didn't do what I wanted or what the NPC wanted, suddenly they're fighting. Maybe it's not that. Maybe it is just like, oh, suddenly they're like, I'd rather serve a different customer. You know, it's like it's a soft consequence that actually kind of carries more weight, weirdly.
Yeah.
Because I think it's the unexpected. Like, so I'm very much, I describe myself as an awkward person, and anyone who really knows me, they know what I mean by that. Like if I have a even slightly embarrassing moment out at like a store, I'll be like, I can't go back there for a long time. And so there's moments in the campaign where I'm running and I'm just like seeing their actions. I'll be like, I can't, like, and I have to catch myself because I'm like, I can't go back there. And I was like, wait, Kyle, this is the game. They're gonna come back, for one, and for two, this is the game. This is how they're supposed to be playing. So we have to. I think forever I kind of ward against that. Like I don't want to introduce that feeling into my game. And I was like, wait, that's real life for me, and I know that everybody who's playing in my game, they're all real life good friends of mine. They know they get who I am. So the first time I ever kind of had that moment where the barkeep was like, you guys can't come back. Jared was like, did we make you feel awkward? Sorry, name drop one of my players. My wizard was like, did we make you feel awkward? And I was like, yes, absolutely. So I was like, you guys aren't welcome back in that bar. Now magically there's another one, another tavern down the block that you can go to, but it's not that one.
That is oddly laid out exactly like this one with slightly different people and slightly different furniture.
I'm gonna flip the map over. It's just the mirror image.
Just 180 mirror. Love it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
That's right.
Yeah.
And something I just thought about too, Tanner. I think if, and this is more on the role playing aspect.
Yeah.
I think the more realistic we can make our NPCs, the more it invites our PCs to actually get into their character as well.
Yes.
I think it's one of those things where, like, if we can really tap into the emotion of the barkeep, because, you know, Kyle, you had mentioned like the waitress who is on her last smile, kind of, you know, if she's having one of those days, you know, if you're, you know, if you treat the players as they walk in, like, you know, I've just had it, or like, or whatever, the more that we can immerse ourselves in the NPCs that we create for them, I think the wider that door opens for them to join us in the world that we're creating, which allows them to really get that fully immersive experience in your world to make that dialogue go back and forth a little bit better.
Yeah.
Yep. And the one thing I would just caution to any other DMs out there, they're now feeling like, oh no, please don't pressure me to do a ton of work on this. It's within reason.
Yeah.
And that's like with all of it, because it also depends on your play group. My group, they're not, like, we do combat and everything, but that's not their favorite part for most of them. We all enjoy it to a degree. We don't want to go too long without it, but we don't even do a combat every session. Sometimes we'll go 2 and 3, and then when that happens, I feel like I have to do one to remind them how to read their character sheets, and then before we can get into the ones that matter again. But that's how my group likes to play. I know of, and I've ran one-offs with other groups that's like, combat's what they want. That's the aspect of the game. They're what they wanted to min-max their characters, and they wanted to do it so they could have really fun combat, and they wanted to go against higher power monsters and harder scenarios. And so that's you know, understand what your group wants, what the goal is. But even within that, like within combat, adding that personality, I think a lot of us think the only time that you can make an NPC feel like they interact with the world, feel alive, is outside of combat. I think that's absolutely not true. That's sometimes the point where you can make it. Like, one of my favorite tropes to play out early in a campaign is that really boisterous villain that just seems so tough, and then you get in combat and they're scared. Yep. And they're the ones that are cowering behind stuff, and they're like, they look like they should be frontline, but they're hiding in the back, and then they're the scared one that gets away, or tries to. Like, I've tried to do that to just kind of like shake things up and make them realize, like, hey, it's not going to be always what it looks like. And then you can go from there. You add cleverness into your villains. Like, if it's a monster that's supposed to be smart, don't have them stand there and get smacked 100 times. That's not smart. Let them use the terrain, get partial cover, use your players against each other. Like, if you have a wizard trying to stay in the back and you have a magic villain, have them do something that, like, hey, I'm up next to your villain. Your shields are way far away from you. What are you going to do now? Like, stuff like that can make it feel like, oh, they're clever, they're thinking. And then, you know, goblins, don't let them do that kind of stuff, but they can still be tricky in their own way. Like, I love that Lost Mines of Fendelver had the flood trap, and that was a goblin trap. And it was very much, you had 2 turns to avoid the flood trap, or you got washed out. And I've done that twice now, and one group, not Shay's group, didn't trigger the flood trap, and then Shay's group went head on into it.
And then we just started throwing PCs. It was the whole thing. So, you know,
it worked.
and what I love, because and let's actually, just to wrap up here, I like that as like a solid tip for how to do this, is play against type, you know, like against the stereotypes. If they're a villain, have them be a kind of weird villain, or like a cowardly villain, or one that you're like, I'm not intimidated by this guy. Why does he keep giving us trouble? You know, or a guy who thinks he's helping you out, but he's actually just ruining your entire adventure. And conversely, have someone who's totally not a villain. Like, usually he'd just be the barkeep, or, you know, the little child that you ask for like tips about town. Have him be like a total douchebag. Like, Just be like, oh, you want some some tips? That'll be 5 gold coins. And then he gives them and like, oh, there's a nice waffle shop around the corner, and then he runs off, right? Like just
Or here's a broken arrowhead. It's a tip.
Yeah.
Exactly, right?
By the way, Tanner, I'm going to steal probably about 6 of those, ideas just so I can take that back to my my game. So,
well, that's the thing. It's so fun for the DM to act that out, and it's fun for the players to realize like, oh, this is different from what I expected, right? It's the paladin not acting like a paladin. It's the wizard who actually doesn't know that much. It's playing against type, but with NPCs, and that always makes it more interesting, right?
And I think
100%.
one thing I will add though too, in that same vein, is like you look at villains, and Kyle and I do this on our podcast as well. Like we bring in Marvel and DC a lot because that's kind of how our brains think. One of the villains that I find fascinating in the DC universe is Dr. Freeze.
Yeah.
Because his whole thing was he didn't start out to act like Two-Face or Joker and just take over, watch the world burn. His whole thing was to save his wife, right?
Yeah.
He had good intentions to start, but by his actions that turned him into the villain that we know as Dr. Freeze. Like it wasn't his intention to do all the things that he did. He was just trying to do what he thought was best for his family and save his wife. Yep. It was like, so like adding that into your game too is like, maybe your villain didn't start out to burn the world down, but just by a series of events, that's just the way the cards fell. And now he's stuck, or he or she's stuck, or he's just like, okay, I've accepted my fate. Now this is the way it's going to be. And then your party has to deal with whatever that ends up being.
Yeah, the time we talked about that, Shay, the biggest thing that we said then was just a reminder that the best villains in any medium are the ones that they're justified in their point.
Yes.
Not right, like they're not on the side of
not
good.
Necessarily, yeah.
But you can see how they got there, and it's like the tragedy of it that they arrived at that conclusion. And that's why they can be the most fun and most heartbreaking to write for, because you're writing for this character, you're putting ton and time into them when you know that you want them to lose.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's accurate.
Thank you, Shay. I love that, because especially, and I think that applies not only to big bads, but also to NPCs, right?
True. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Have a reason, that they are the way they are. Like justify, if they're grouchy, justify it. That's backstory in a way that the players, if they want to, they can delve deeper. Don't put in too much work. We've talked about that, right?
Right, right.
Just have a facade on the front that you're like, oh, this is interesting. And then if the players start trying to peel that back, like you can create something there. It could be a quest. Could be, a simple interaction. Could be a full-on relationship going on that like lasts throughout the campaign. Whatever it is, just, have that in mind. So to wrap up here, we like to give our guests a chance to just share final thoughts on the topic. Let's start with Kyle, then we'll have Shay, and then I'll finish.
All right, sounds good.
Sounds good. Yeah, my final thoughts on this subject are, just make characters that feel like they belong in the world, and then give them a motivation, and make sure that you record their names, because you never know when your player characters are going to want you to hark back to a character from 2 years ago. Yep. Trust me, you'll save yourself a ton of time, and find that rhythm that works for you. It's supposed to be fun. Remember that. If it starts to feel like a chore, it's okay to back off a little bit.
Yeah. And I think final thought for me, just when you're creating NPCs in particular, I mean, don't feel like you have to just go on this epic imaginary trail of like, oh, who could this be? Just draw on the inspirations around you, draw on the people that you work with, draw on the people that you've met at the grocery store, your kids, for, heaven's sakes. I mean, so some of the characters that I've had to deal with are some of the imaginations that my kids have given me. And some of them have worked well and some of them have been downright terrible. But, it's just, I guess my big thing is like, take that inspiration from wherever you can and just allow that to kind of envelop itself into a humanoid shape type form that you can kind of run with in your game. So
Yeah, I love that. That one, I wanted to talk about that earlier, but I totally agree, especially like draw inspiration from the people you know / people in movies and TV shows,
yeah,
right?
Yep.
They
yeah,
are a free, source of NPC
oh yeah,
starting points, which then leads to my last point, which is let your NPCs change, like seriously
Hmm.
yes,
change, not just slightly change, in the way that, like, hey, due to the world events, and especially the events that the players cause and the players' choices, let your NPCs get more bitter, more hopeful, more funny, more, distrusting of the NPCs and their motive. Let them change in a way that is very noticeable to the players, and then they'll have more creativity in how they interact with NPCs in the future.
mm-hmm.
Well, on that note, thank you. Honestly, Kyle, Shay, really appreciated having you on.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you
us,
so
man.
much.
We appreciate it.
Now, how can our audience find you guys?
We're on the interwebs, kind of. So we mostly we are. Let me try that again. Our stuff
I
is
believe in you.
on a lot of the audio channels, the YouTubes, the Apple Podcasts, Spotify's, all the major platforms. We haven't done a whole lot as far as social media, as we like to say on
We
our
should go
channel.
go.
The social medias we get a lot of ADD and we just don't post a lot, but we do watch our email to see if we hear from people. So we would love to talk to y'all. Thank you, Tanner, for just having the opportunity to come and talk with you guys here. But yeah, hit us up at dungeonmastertalk@gmail.com. I think we're at DMT the podcast for the X, Twitter people, all the social
And
media stuff.
Instagram.
Oh, and the Instagram. Yeah, exactly. That tells you how much I use it.
Yeah, if
But
you
yeah,
message on Instagram, you'll get me, not Shay, but I'll do my best.
that's accurate.
and
But yeah,
and of course, they have wonderful podcasts. Go to Dungeon Master Talk. Are you guys both on Apple Podcast and Spotify?
yep.
Cool.
Yep.
Go to either one. Listen. They do a lot of what we're doing, just with a wonderful different perspective that Justin and I really enjoy. And now, before we wrap up, remember, for everyone on Patreon, we're going to have a small little discussion at the end just for you guys about paying off NPC plot threads. But I want to thank everybody who's listening. I also want to thank everybody who's involved in the community, to our patrons and our Discord moderators and all of the Discord members out there. And we'll keep bringing back other handcrafted episodes so that you guys have a wonderful time being DMs, right? It's hard, but it can also be very enjoyable. But until then, let's go ahead and roll initiative.